Hello, my beloved Youest You soul seeker listeners. Thank you so much for choosing to be here today. I'm so excited to introduce you to this phenomenal, badass woman who I got to meet a year or so ago through the wonderful exchange program. She is going to really dive deep into how we can feel more to heal ourselves. I'll just give you that little bit of information, but let me introduce you first to Dr. Cynthia Whitaker. Dr. Whitaker is the interim CEO at Greater Nashua Mental Health. She is dually licensed both as a psychologist and a master licensed alcohol and drug counselor. She is a strong advocate of social justice and is passionate about increasing access to mental health services for all. She is fluent in American Sign Language and continues to be involved in advocating for and providing training about mental health services for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing, as well as teaching and training about various other topics related to behavioral health. She is known for her engaging and motivating style of leading and training that inspires individuals and groups to connect with their strengths and reach their potential. All right, Dr. Whitaker, I am so honored to have you here today. You were someone I met, I think, early on in the exchange community, and just it was an immediate like, who is this amazing woman? I feel like I've known you and just love what you're up to. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Julie. Thank you for having me here.
I just feel like, gosh, there's a lot we can dive into, especially with your background. I feel like with all that's going on right now with the pandemic, we're recording this around the election time. There's a lot of energy there, but just thinking about how much has shifted and how uncertain times are. I'm just curious. A lot of this show is really about how do you tune into your higher self, your best self, your truest essence, your You-est You. And I think the playing field has really changed right now, how to do that. And just curious, maybe to start out, just to really talk about your take on what's going on and what can we do to up our self-care.
It's a great question. For me, I've always been somebody of strong faith. And so that the belief in the divine and that there's something bigger than who we are, I think is something we need to just continually remind ourselves of as things are happening around us. That, there's things greater than us also at play, whether we want to call it quantum physics or God or the divine, whatever we want to call it, there is something bigger than us. So that's been a big source of my self-care through all of this, is that reminder of that, and thinking about, just kind of tapping into that divine within me. And what is that? And so that's, I don't know, that's just sort of what popped into my head where do we start? That's a good place to start. Because there is so much going on right now that really impacts us. And if we're not mindful about how we're taking care of ourselves and who we surround ourselves with, then we can get caught up in that negativity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that the first thing you went into, though, this has helped me a lot as well, as just whatever you call it, however you name it, whatever that is for you, listener, and for what you're saying, it's really getting that you're not alone, that there's something greater that's with you, whether you call it a higher power or the divine or God or whatever, that quantum physics, divine matrix. And I love that you said that, really having that strong faith and leaning into that right now is such it might be one that's overlooked. I think sometimes we think about, okay, what are the to-do items I need to do to make sure I'm okay? And it's like, actually, maybe first start with like a little surrender or faith. I don't know if that speaks to you.
It totally speaks to me. In fact, that's part of my story, is because of some things that happened in my life. I was very much what's the to-do list? What's the check boxes? How do I get this best life? And people coming into treatment with me would do that same thing. Like, oh, I see this person is successful. How did they get there? What medicine are they taking? What treatment program did they go to? Like, as if there was this neat to-do list checkbox thing that gives us to our, our best life. And it's like, no, we have to let go of the thought that there's something neat and simple, right? Our life is messy. Relationships are messy. It's not a neat checkbox, there isn't a one size fits all recipe to get to your Youest You or to get to your best life.
Yeah.
There's more to it than that.
I love what you're saying. Would you tell us a little bit more about your story, about kind of, because it sounds like there's something there. Because if you're teaching and doing this now, but weren't always this way, can you tell us a little bit how your evolution of your Youest You?
Sure. My evolution of my Youest You. I often tell a story about, like, how did I decide to become a psychologist, right? And I learned American Sign Language starting as a really young child, just because of my family background. And so when I did my undergrad, I did an undergrad in speech and hearing sciences as well as an undergrad in psych. So I was in this like choice point in my life about, do I go to graduate school to become a speech language pathologist, or do I go to graduate school to become a psychologist? And at the time I was working in a hospital, and a deaf person came in, very suicidal, but this was well before like the ADA and laws about needing interpreters. And I ended up as a bachelor's level person doing this woman's intake because I didn't have interpreting skills. I couldn't interpret for the psychiatrist who was trying to intake. So instead he just handed me the questions and I did the intake, which no one should ever do at that level, but needed to be done because she needed to be admitted. But I ended up leaving. I was scheduled to leave to come up to New Hampshire, where I now live, to snowmobile. Even back then, I'm an avid snowmobiler. And when I came back from being away for the weekend, this woman just ran to me in like tears about having, had a shot that she didn't know what was and being tied to a bed. And just like, I'm so glad you're back. And like, boom, that moment, I was like, oh, it's psychology. I need to go make sure this doesn't happen as far as in my ability to influence that. And that's usually the story I tell and where I leave the story. Because it is the truth. It propelled me into my graduate career. But then while I was in graduate school, I was just about done with my studies and was moving on to move into an internship, which is kind of the end of becoming a doctor. And I was in a bad car accident. I broke both my ankles. I was T-boned. Somebody was driving an SUV. It was actually a very young person, just had their license, was home from college break, driving dad's SUV in a small little snowstorm and lost control because they were going too fast. And my little Civic went underneath his SUV. It is terrible. So here I am in grad school. I'm the doctor almost. And I started to have symptoms like nobody's business. I was having flashbacks. I couldn't sleep. I mean, I started drinking.
Wow.
So I had a serious bout of PTSD, but I told no one.
Right.
Because the healer isn't supposed to need healing. So I kept it secret. And for a long time, eventually, thankfully, found some trauma treatment and was able to move past that. But that's really, I think for me, what became the defining moment of like who I am as a psychologist, because I've been there and it helps me understand like stigma, because like I wouldn't talk about it. And just how dangerous secrets and isolation and not having self-compassion. It just like cascades. It's such a downward spiral. So now I talk about an upward spiral and the importance of community and the importance of compassion and the importance of kind of carrying on or feeling the feels in order to heal it, right? So we don't want to hide, whether it's through drinking or eating or whatever it's from. So yeah, that's kind of the more real story, if you will, about how I figured out to find my Youest You was not to hide.
Mm. First of all, thank you. I have chills. I had chills when you were telling that story, and there's so many things you said that I think others are going to relate to, and I appreciate you saying this so vulnerably and openly. And I think, you said the healer is not supposed to need healing, and I think that's this faulty belief. Which, even as I
Yes.
say it, I'm like, we're not humans. We're not perfect. Like, of course, there's going to be times we need support or healing, and to think, I was thinking the work that you're in, like the amount of compassion and empathy you must have now, having gone through that probably
Mhm.
wasn't there before this accident experience. But I think this, what you're talking about with the stigma, needing more self-compassion, I'm thinking about right now with, we don't even know the implications of what's happening. I have kids right downstairs as we talk. I heard one of them just now. They're on Zoom. They're in school on Zoom. I mean, they're not socializing as much. Like, there's so many implications. And what you said about we've got to feel the feels, like, versus hiding behind drugs,
Mhm.
alcohol, behind food, behind TV, whatever it is.
I think about it this way, like if we don't let ourselves feel it,
Yeah.
then like there's no reason to heal what doesn't feel broken.
Oh, that's really well said. Say that again for everybody. I myself, there's no
There's
reason.
no reason to heal what doesn't feel broken.
That's so smart. So you need that
And
awareness.
so if you don't let yourself feel hurt or like acknowledge or just not be secret or pretend it doesn't hurt, then
Yeah.
you can't get to the healing because like it's just how we work. It's how our bodies are designed. You have pain, you pay attention to the pain, you
Yeah.
heal the pain, you do what needs to be done. And so when we don't acknowledge or we cover up or we numb or we might have some superficial healing,
Yeah.
never get to the true deep healing unless we sort of step into the feels. And
Yeah. Okay, can you talk? Because I'm like, sometimes when we do these conversations, I can hear questions that are coming in, or it might just be my own question. And of course, it could be both because I have them myself. Um, but I'm wondering, like, honestly, for some of us, I was one of these people. Like, I was wonderful parents, but frankly, I was really not taught how to feel. I know that might sound, I'm talking about, I'm speaking to you if you're listening and you're like, yeah, me too. We're talking about the feelings, not the feelings of like, yay, this just happened, or celebratory, or excited, or optimistic. No, I'm talking about the feelings that really don't feel good, like fear, anxiety, anger, resentment, that land. Like,
Mhm,
how, and I want to ask you this, and I hope you don't mind, I'm bringing this in too, but I know, for example, and I know others listening because I've gotten responses. I know I'm highly sensitive, and I know I'm an empath. So I feel other feelings
mhm.
already. And I'm just curious, maybe we could just start with like feelings, like feeling 101. Like, what do you teach or talk about, or what can you share that might be helpful for everybody right now?
I think one of the first things that we talk about is often that feelings are normal, right? Like everybody feels the gamut of feelings.
Yeah.
It's okay to have both the positive and the negative. Like that's part of our human experience. Like we can't fully appreciate the positives without some of the negatives.
Yeah.
Um, and that said, our feelings come and go.
Yep.
And one of my favorite quotes, it's actually from a writer and speaker by the name of Lisa Turkhurst. She says that feelings are indicators, not dictators, right? Um,
Mhm.
our feelings are an indication that we need to pay attention and we need to do something, but we shouldn't let our feelings dictate what we do
So brilliant.
because our feelings will often want to respond to an extreme, right? So we feel fear and our feeling tells us to avoid.
Right.
but instead we should see it as an indicator of, I need to pay attention to something, and then use our intuition and our thoughts and what we know to be true to determine how we respond to that. And like, for me, that's the key.
I love I love that feeling. I've never heard that. Feelings are indicators, not dictators. It's brilliant. Pay attention. Don't let them dictate what you do. Go in deeper.
Mhm.
Um, and this might be like the next level of it. But for example, I have found I mean, I'll just say kind of vulnerably, we've had three kids here. My husband and I were remarried. I have two. We have three, and it's been a lot going on. And fair or unfair, I was finding myself, it wasn't even, I don't even know what I was frustrated about with him, to be very honest. Like, he's done nothing wrong. And it's really, it hit me something like, it's not about him. It feels like
Mhm.
it's about him. So okay, like many of us are at home or with more people, and I've just found, I mean, I've upped my self-care, and I'd like to talk about self-care in a moment too, but so you have these feelings and it's towards somebody else, but it's really not. Like, how do you navigate that? Because if you don't, I mean, I know how to keep it in check, but it felt like it was towards him, honestly.
Mhm.
So I'm curious.
First of all, I think you have already hit it like on the head. Like, for me, when I start to feel that frustration and I'm like, or that irritability, it's an indicator I need sleep, or I'm not doing enough self-care. Like, and I had to learn that about myself. Um, but I think one of the other keys of sort of figuring out that difference is to go back to kind of the compassion piece,
Yeah.
right? Um, and and when I think about compassion, what I think compassion is suspended judgment,
Oh, that's good. That's so good. I love
right? And so self-compassion is suspending judgment of myself, right? And compassion toward others is not being judgmental of others and being open to their perspective and their ideas. And, and so kind of figuring out that, okay, my feeling feels like it's towards somebody else.
right.
All right, well, if I try to do this without judgment, like if I can muster up the compassion and the gratitude, what am I left with? What's left there?
Mm.
And that sometimes will help kind of separate that out some, right? If I remove the judgment, if I remove the all or none thinking, if I remove what's left, and often I'm frustrated with myself, um, or just whatever's happening around, or there's some other negative energy I'm responding to.
Yeah. That is, I'm like, it's a drop the mic moment for me. I hope as you're listening, for you as well. No, it's just the way you said it, and I believe this, the idea of self-compassion, compassion for others, or the person that you might be angry, frustrated, annoyed, jealous, whatever's going on. But it's suspended judgment, which even I'm feeling what that does as well. It takes you out of that spin cycle of just, I, to be honest, going back to the addiction piece, what we were talking about, I find judgment is, I hate feeling judgment towards
Mhm,
myself or somebody else. And that is often what I want to not feel and
mhm,
pick up. For me, it's food or
mhm, mhm.
whatever.
Well, I mean, for me, it was the shame.
Shame.
So like the healer didn't need healing. And so I had so much shame around having symptoms, which were frankly a normal response to a
Yeah.
horrific thing. Um, and that it was the trying to avoid that feeling that led to the downward spiral. It wasn't the anxiety um,
Mm.
that came from the actual incident itself that led to the downward spiral. It was that judgment. And one of the other things, and I know, and it is a biggie for me, like I often will get mad at other people when I'm fearing they're judging me. And that's when I get into that place of, oh, I'm irritable with you. And it's all about you because you're judging me. And then it's like, no, 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 no. Fear of judgment by others is actually comes because I've self-judged already.
Wow, that's
right? And so the way to let go of the fear of judgment of others is to let go of the judgment of self first. Um, and that's not to say we're perfect and we should be excused and, everything we do is great and wonderful. But it's, the other way to put it in the mindfulness tradition is the second arrow,
Mm.
right? So like the first arrow causes pain, but instead of just acknowledging that pain, taking the arrow out and healing the wound, we are so mad we got hurt by the first arrow, we throw a second arrow at ourselves and the pain continues on rather than allowing ourselves to heal. And, judgment, shame, are just, they're biggies. It's the second arrow. It's the one we have to try to learn not to throw at ourselves. Because when we do, we lose compassion for others and we get into a not so great space.
Yeah, this is a really judgment and shame. Now, this is really, I love, so powerful. And I'm thinking, when you think about what's the antidote, self-care and compassion, and maybe just talk for a moment or two, like really how to cultivate that, like in real terms. And I think this is so pertinent right now because you don't even have to be highly sensitive or an empath to be feeling there's a lot going on in
So
the
true.
world. A lot, like it can feel really heavy. So maybe how do you cultivate? Because to getting out of shame and self-judgment, that's the key.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there's multiple ways to make it practical. And it depends where it comes from, right? So like for me, flash forward or back rather, to a car accident that jumbled up my brain and had some real significant trauma. Like I needed an initial first step to help me get through that piece to sort of set my brain right. With like some energy psychology stuff. I did some EMDR as an example of what I did. And that sort of helped me be then ready enough to then jump into other things, which included, like some journaling and, making sure that I was doing visualizations and
Mm.
meditation and mindfulness. And I know a lot of times people hear those words and they think, oh, that's frou-frou-y, that's not practical. But it can be practical, right? And it doesn't have to be, I sit silently because, in meditation, you don't have to be silent. It's such a,
Yeah.
it's a false, talk about another false belief, right? Because we are human beings and we're thinking. Again, it's just more about letting it be indicators, not reacting to it, right? Just because we think it doesn't mean we have to act on it, or doesn't mean it's even true, frankly. So those are some things. I mean, listening to things that bring joy, engaging all of the senses. So, what's a favorite smell? What's favorite things you look at? Just constantly.
Mm.
And I also think one of the other big things is community.
Yeah.
Like without having community and people where we can be our authentic selves with, we stay stuck. And so in some ways, like the whole self-care, it's important we slow down and take care of ourselves. Is it great? But if we do it devoid of other people and devoid of community, it also has like a ceiling, a maximum that it can bring us. So there's also the who do you self-care with?
Mm.
Group care. Where do we group care? Maybe is group care. We'll call it group care.
I love that. Well, I love that. It's like self to symphony, self to group.
Exactly. Because, we find our highest selves, we find our best selves in relationship with other people.
Right. So true.
Who we're with, who we're around, who our tribe is, makes us better. So how do you find that? Is it a faith community? Is it a community like the one that you're creating for your listeners? Even if you're not with them face to face, they can depend on your podcast and they're part of the You-est You tribe.
Yeah.
They fit, they belong. So
Yeah.
what's somebody's community? Where is it?
It's so interesting. Not to, I just reminding me when in March, when the pandemic, like that first, I think it was March 16th, it was right before St. Patrick's Day. I remember I woke up and I heard this inner voice that said, Julie, your mission just started. You need to create a community immediate. Like literally, I heard that. And I had started a group. We met every day for 2 weeks, this good vibes immunity boost. And then out of that, this idea for a year that I'd been sitting with, I these the word sacred and scared came in about a year earlier, and I was taking notes for a year, like, when are people going to be scared? And same lettering, and it's like, fear and faith, like they go
Mm-hmm.
together. And so it's interesting, just starting this sacredology community. I've seen, like, honestly, I need it for me. It's,
Mm-hmm.
we met through exchange. I mean, just finding whatever it is, finding a community so that you're not doing this alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what you said. We find our best self. We do in relation with others. It's brilliant.
We do. I mean, it's the way we're wired, right? I mean, we're wired to be with other people. We're wired to be with ourselves and connect with ourselves, but it's not of any use to ourselves, right? I mean, the usefulness of all of our strengths is to share with others.
Totally.
Um, yeah.
I love this. If so, I'm wondering, like, wisdom advice for those right now. Like, so, um, if I'm thinking of those listening and who maybe have struggled with some sort of, as you said, it could be addiction to shame, to being worried of shame and people judging you. It could be, gosh, I think social media could be an addiction. TV, I mean, really, like legit, your phone can become an addiction. I'm just wondering, where is a good place to start? Like, okay, so you notice, all right, I'm not really feeling what's going on. When I do, I feel very overwhelmed. Do you have any, like, where can we start, or any advice or wisdom, just tools or resources or anything? I know you've mentioned journaling, and all of these are so great. Anything else that comes to your heart or mind that might be helpful?
I hear myself like calling it 3 C's for some reason for this moment. Um, so because we talked about community, so the importance of not isolating,
Yeah.
not keeping a secret, the importance of compassion, um, right? Suspending judgment for both self and others. And then I just heard carry on, like carry on,
Oh, I love
uh,
that.
right? And like I'm thinking about the meme of keep calm and carry on, right? But like, so
Yeah.
how do we carry on? We don't cower, we don't we don't cover, right? We keep going so that we can get to kind of the core of who we are, and
Mm,
for whatever is preventing us um, from being our best selves. Which that like makes me think too of another kind of thing that often do with folks is a lot of times when there's a gap between who we want to be and who we see ourselves as right now,
yeah.
often what people focus on is the barrier, like what's preventing me from getting there.
Yeah.
And so they see it as this problem that needs to be solved.
Mm,
That sometimes prevents us from getting there because we're so focused on the problem, right? Instead of flipping that to say, okay, well, this is who I want to be and this is where I am. Who do I need to be that person? What are my strengths? What am I doing right? What's one thing I could do today that could get me to be there, instead of trying to fix a problem or break down a barrier. Because often when we think about barriers, we externalize it,
yeah.
and we forget that a lot of the strength is already within us. The solution is already within us most of the time.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
but we're giving up our power and putting it to the outside. Um, so that, I mean, I think that's another big key is to focus on, what can I do today? Another person in our community, Patricia Marino, said something, man, that has just stuck with me. And that is, don't let what you can't do get in the way of what you can do.
Yeah. Love that.
like I was moving furniture the other day, and I was getting stuck. I couldn't do it. And I heard myself inside say, don't let what you can't do get in the way of what you can do. And I just stepped back and said, all right, if I do this a different way, I can do this. Right. And, so instead of thinking about the barriers, instead of thinking about what we can't do, focus on what you can do. A little bit of a shift
Yeah.
makes a big difference over time.
Oh, I have chills. I love the 3 C's. I love that. It reminds me of like diamond shopping, the 4 C, like clarity, cut, and yeah, but this is legit. This is going to help you to stay grounded. And I love this community, not isolating, compassion, suspending judgment, and then carry on. What can you do today and focusing on the strengths? You know, again, it's like, oh yeah, like but I miss it. I'm sure those that are listening miss that. Like, look and see. I love you also said something else that I thought was very applicable, which is where you are now, where you want to be. It's who do you need to be that person, and so what can you do now to be that person, and then playing on your strengths. And right away I was like, I need to go sit with myself and like go do a little bit of journaling on that, because I get
Mhm.
caught up sometimes and I'm not there yet and I should be. And what am I doing wrong? I tend to go into that place of like, oh, I did something wrong. I must have missed the memo, or like I failed, or I mean, it's just
Mhm.
catastrophic thinking that I think I'm not the only one. I think we do that sometimes.
I think the other question is also, and who can I invite into this journey with me,
Oh, that is,
right? Because if we get too much into the I can do it all myself, I
yeah.
mean, this is definitely the pot calling the kettle black. Uh, um, that's definitely a trap for me. Is I can do this, I can do that, I got this, and it's like, no, I don't have to have it all, and
Yeah.
I can't have it all. Um, that I need to invite people into the journey, and it makes both of us better, right? It allows me to um, be better at being me if I invite people into the journey with me.
I just love that language. My brain just went, all right, we're going to talk after about being accountability partners if you want. That's always, see, I'm always like, what can I do? What's the action? I'm like, she's awesome. We could do that. But that's the thing. It's like inviting people
Mm-hmm.
who, who you want to surround yourself with is I think what
Mm-hmm.
you're hearing, to help support you and help
Mm-hmm.
nurture that new way of being, and to do it together. And I love that. Who can I invite on this journey? And I think for right now too, that's a really important question, because we're in such an isolating time. Like I can tell you, for example, my mom, who's such a extrovert and volunteered and was, I mean, every day was literally, she was a music teacher, opera singer. So she'd be playing at this home or this place or this community. And it's been really, I think it's been really hard for her. And I'm just thinking, if there's a lot of isolation. So for her, for anybody listening, if you're listening, mom, who can you invite on your journey so you're not doing this alone?
Exactly. And to remember, it is not check boxes. There is not a recipe.
Yeah.
So again, right? Like I'd love to be able to say, if you just do your morning routine and you wake up and you journal and you it'll be great. And it's not that. I mean, life is not check boxes in a recipe. And I
Yeah.
don't know the answer for every single one of your listeners, but I do know if they find compassion and they have community and they keep going without kind of numbing those feelings, that they have more likelihood of finding themselves in that.
Yeah, so well said. I was just thinking, winking to you, like, as you said, the listeners, and like Dr. Whitaker is actually one of the Youest You listeners, which is so cool. I'm so grateful that to have you here today, to have you as a listener, to have your gifts in the world. I want to end with this question, and then, of course, anything else that comes to mind or heart. Just from what you're seeing and the pretty big roles you're having in the mental health community and world, I'm just going to flip it a little and ask, what do you think might be some of the gifts of this time?
I definitely think one gift is creativity. Um,
Yeah.
and forcing movement. I think there's been a lot of stagnation
Yeah.
in a lot of different places that's been able to move forward because we've had to. So things like telehealth for mental health is a simple example for that, right? Like it's been stagnant and the back and forth and okay, have to do it, go, right? And I think there's lots of examples like that. Like I love the fact that every single restaurant now has outdoor seating. Hello, right? Like we're made to be outdoors. Like, isn't this great? Um, so there's so much. The ability more for people to connect better, like through Zoom and the people that are hopping on face-to-face calls rather than just social media posts and
Mm.
with family members or, oh, you can't be at Thanksgiving? Let's set you up and have a Zoom call with you. Whereas a year ago, oh, you're not able to be at Thanksgiving? Okay. Nobody would have thought to have grandma come with a Zoom call. We just would have all called her.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of creativity that's coming out. And I just hope we continue to embrace that because I think as humans, we're very creative. But often we have to, again, let go of the check boxes, let go of the allure of perfection, and instead think about intention. Uh,
Mm. Well said. You have so many things. I'm like, I have 7 pages of notes. I can't. So everyone listening, I always say this will all be in the show notes because really there's so much you said. You said let go of perfection and embrace.
Intention.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's like check boxes, right? Like the check boxes, we want it to just be perfect. And it's like, no, 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 no. Or the who do I want to be? If that's your intention, let go of getting there perfectly. Just follow that intention, embrace that intention. What do I need to do to get there? Who do I need to have around me to get there?
Well, and I think this goes back to the beginning, the first question, because I just what came to me was one of my intentions is just full trust, full faith
Mm.
that all is unfolding in exact divine time, space, reality, however you want to call it. And so that going back to what you were saying, one of the things that helps you so much is this faith, this trusting. And that could be an intention. I know that is like every day I get in child's pose, put my hands in surrender position, and I'm like, please, like, do something with restore me to some sanity in all ways, because otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I left unchecked may not
Right,
be.
right.
But I love,
And the journey to get to that intention is not going to be perfect. It's not
yeah,
going to be the way we think it's going to be. It's going to be messy. But messy is how we learn. Messy is how we grow. I mean,
yeah,
messy is good. Um,
yeah. Yeah, I'm still working on that phrase. Messy is good, but I'm with you. I get it. I'm like, someday I will embrace that. But no, I'm with you. It's true because life is messy, of course.
mhm.
Of course. Any remaining this so what I you probably heard me say this. I always ask if you have a heart flare. That's like something in your heart. I didn't ask you, but it's like I wanted to share this with the community before we end. Is there any heart flares, Dr. Whitaker?
No, I mean, we've covered all of them,
Okay.
but I do think it's nobody is alone.
Mm,
We're not alone. We're all in this together. And nobody has to suffer in silence or secrecy. Like,
mm,
and if we are, we're doing damage to ourselves and we're we're not able to, embrace our full potential and be our best selves. And so
yeah.
speak up, find
Mm,
a trusted person, even if it's one person. Often people go to a therapist, right? And start with a therapist. You practice trust with that person in that relationship, and then you learn how to do it and you can grow from there. It's not the only way, but certainly it's one way. But yeah.
awesome. Thank you so much. This has been I am actually so grateful to have had our conversation now in this point in moment in history. And oh my God, you shared so much wisdom, really applicable wisdom. I'm really grateful for you, who you've chosen to be in the world, and just really honor also your story. Like, I can only imagine coming from that healing, serving background to then move through your own sounds like dark experience that really helps you to have a different sense and empathy. But just so grateful for you.
Thank you, Julie. Grateful for you and all that you do for your community as well.
Thank you. And I want to thank you, beautiful dear listener. Thank you for tuning in today. And all of this will be both on YouTube, the podcast audio, and there will be show notes. And we will be highlighting some of these amazing truth flares that were just really, really powerful. And I just thank you for your heart, your time, your generosity, and gracious listening. I know that you have many other places that you could tune into, and really, truly am honored we're both honored to be part of your listening today. So much love.